Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. We're going to start our program. So welcome to Inside Out. I have some special guests today with us that I'm going to be introducing shortly. What I'd like to do is I start with some introductions. Then we're going to move into a kind of a quick little overview, reminder for some people about Norwood, and then we're going to kick off our program. For those of you who haven't participated before, if you do have a question while our program is going on, please key it in to either the chat or the Q&A box, and we'll be able to see your questions and share them with today's guests. So thank you so much. So I'm going to first introduce John and Katie. John and Katie Higgins live at Norwood here, of course, and moved from Washington, D.C. To Washington, D.C. How long ago was that?
Just last year we moved in.
Okay.
Next month will be our first anniversary here.
Well, happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then we also have Nancy Roderer with us today as well. And Nancy has lived at Norwood for longer than John and Katie. Nancy, how long have you been here?
6 years.
That's quite some time. Yes. Okay, very good. So now what we're going to do is just do a little refresher for some people who may be tuning in for the first time. But I wanted to share with you a little bit about Nollywood. We are a life plan community, and we're here in Washington, D.C., located on about 16 acres. One of the nice things about Nollywood is we're situated right on Rock Creek Park. We're hidden back in the neighborhood. I'm tucked away. A lot of people don't know that we're here. One side of our campus is Rock Creek Park, and the other three sides are just neighborhood houses. Yet within a mile, you have the wonderful restaurants and shops and businesses that are along Connecticut Avenue. And so it's a great place. Nowhood is a place for people that are 62 or better. And we have multiple levels of living here. Today, you're meeting people who live independently, manage their own lives, and are in charge. And that is about independent living. We do have somebody who wants the sound raised, so I guess I need to raise my sound a little bit. Thank you, Anne. And I'm going to put my glasses on to do that. I'm not used to this computer. My sound is right here. Okay, so hopefully that's better for you, Anne. And in addition to the independent living, which is the majority of the community, Norwood also has a small assisted living and small skilled nursing and memory care as well. And we also do rehab. So if any of you ever need a hip or a knee replacement, make sure you call us because you might be able to do your rehab here, even if you don't live here. Might be is the key phrasing. So now we'd like to move on and kind of get into our program a little bit, because you're not here for me. You're here because of John, Katie, and Nancy. One thing I would like to do is first ask John or Katie just a simple question. Did either of you serve in the military?
No, I did not. I was a journalist and an editor before I came.
Okay. And how about Nancy? Did you ever serve in the military?
No.
No. Okay. And the reason I ask these questions is many people think that this community is a community for military. And while the founding and the roots are certainly military, and originally everybody who lived here was a military widow. And over the years, Norwood has expanded and grown, and it still definitely has military roots and pretty much of a military culture too. But not everybody here is military, and Norwood does welcome people who aren't. So that's why I asked that question. And if you do have questions for John, Katie, or Nancy, please pop them in. One of the first things I'd like to do is just kind of ask, I'll start maybe with Nancy, and what are your favorite things to do outside of Nollywood?
Well, there are many, but among them are perhaps not first, but the one that comes to mind first is water aerobics. So there's a swimming pool on the ground floor, and I have done water aerobics for many years, but it's pretty special to be able to wake up in the morning and get to water aerobics without going outside. Another thing that I like to do at Norwood is volunteer. And I should admit now that I'm the president of the Resident Association, so not only do I like to volunteer, but I like to get others to volunteer too. But we have a very active resident association, and it is involved in a lot of things, including working on external affairs, working with DC politics, doing things internal to Knollwood, like setting up a new makerspace. So lots of activities, lots of opportunities to volunteer. And I should point out, of course, that John and Katie are quite active volunteers, and I'm grateful for them.
And now what about outside of Norwood, Nancy? What kind of things do you like to do away from Norwood?
I love to travel. Again, it's very nice to be able to travel when that's allowed, and not to have to worry about the house or maintenance or much of anything else, just to take off and travel. I also like the theater and ballet, and of course there's lots and lots of that in Washington. And a special feature of living at Nollywood is that you can, if there's a group trip to the theater or their ballet, you can take the bus, which drops you right at the front door. It's quite a lovely feature too.
So you don't have to worry about parking or rain or fighting traffic.
Right.
Okay. How about the same question for John and Katie? What are some of your favorite things to do outside of Norwood?
Following up on what Nancy said, it's nice to know that Nollywood often gets discount tickets for plays and for musical events, so that makes it a little more affordable. And of course, the bus, which takes you there and brings you back, that's just great, because I do not like driving. John and I, neither of us like driving at night, and of course, parking in Washington is very difficult. So that's one of the outside activities. And then our son and his wife and our grandchildren live just about 5 blocks from us on Tennyson Street, so we enjoy going to visit them. And we're looking forward to going back to normal life and having all these activities beginning again in terms of the trips to music or concerts or museums, whatever it might be.
We also have a summer place in Michigan that we go to every year for 6 weeks or so. And we do walking and canoeing, kayaking, that kind of thing, sailing. So we're kind of outdoorsy still. We're pretty happy about that. Following up on Nancy too, this was our first summer.
Remember your swimming.
And our swimming, yes. Swimming also helps with the pool here. I love to swim. But this is our first summer experience away from Nollywood, and when we come back and we just lock the door and walk away. You don't have to do any planning. You don't have to arrange for yard work. You just go and come back, and it's very convenient. And it was really very, very satisfying to do that this year.
Yeah. Is there something that any of you, maybe we'll start with John and Katie, but what are the things you would want the viewers to know before they move to Nollywood?
Oh, before they come to Nollywood. Well, I would say definitely look around. Because that gives you a good sense of what is out there in terms of retirement communities. And the more you see, the more you will be able to sort of focus on the activities and things that you like. And of course, the thing that influenced us to come here was the warmth and generous welcome that we received every time we came just to visit. And of course, this has been sustained throughout our time here. It's a very friendly population, a very welcoming and very interesting group of people that we've met. So,
you know, I would say also give yourself a fair amount of time to explore and make up your lists about things you like or don't like. And I second Katie in advising you to make physical visits. So you can really get a feel for the place. It was a combination of, for us, of sort of rational list things and features that we liked. And then when we came here, we also got a great feel for the place and just a real good feeling that this was the place for us. So there is a sort of intangible there, which you can't get unless you actually physically visit and interact with people. We had a similar situation coming here because we didn't do it by Zoom. We met some of the residents in person. And as Katie said, they were very warm and welcoming. And that was one of the deciding factors for us.
And then we have the same question for Nancy. What would you want people to know before they would come and live at Nollywood? Any advice?
Well, I think what John and Katie have said is it's a big decision and make it carefully. And I would certainly agree with that. And I add, take the time you need to make the decision and to be sure of what you'd like to do. One of the things that we thought about a lot before we came here was what it would be like to live in a community. Neither my husband or I had done that since college, which was a while ago. And we kind of wondered how it would compare to a dorm experience. And the answer is, well, it is something like a dorm experience with all of the pluses and minuses that entails. But I think among the pluses are the variety of people that live here. And I'm remembering that when we visited here before we lived here, we had stayed overnight and we had dinner, and we met a couple in the dining room who were very friendly and whom we enjoyed very much, and they got to be very good friends. And I think I can say that having lived here 6 years, I've made lots of friends here, and that's knowing that is likely to happen is something that might help you get through the admittedly difficult times of downsizing and moving.
Thank you. A question did pop in from Mary, and her question is there a travel group or association that plans trips of interest for small groups at Norwood?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Maybe tell more about that, Nancy.
So there are several staff members here at Knollwood who manage the trips like that, and there is a resident committee that works with them to select, to identify possibilities. So, for example, I know the group is currently looking at the new Word Museum. I think it's called Word Text, something like that. In DC, but so they try and plan a whole variety of activities based around different components of wellness. So there are intellectual things and financially related things and spiritually related things and many, many kinds of activities. These all get summarized in a calendar that comes out that's pretty full. At least in non-COVID times.
Yeah. Would you add anything, Katie or John?
No, the calendar's wonderful. It's really comprehensive in terms of all the activities. And I love opera, so I like going to the streaming opera from the Met, which they do once a month at least, and also theater. And the guy who comes in to lecture on Shakespeare after we've seen the play, he's fabulous. So in a way, it's like going back to college, and I happen to love that. It just suits me perfectly.
Yes, there are some overnight trips too, Kate.
Yeah.
The beach is the one I remember.
Yeah, going to the beach would be kind of fun. But maybe not right now. I don't know. I think there's been a lot of, might be a little chilly right now.
Yeah.
But yeah. And I know a lot of people do also travel on their own also.
Mhm.
So, um, like you and Katie mentioned, you go away for extended periods of time, but I know there are also people that go away for just weekends or family trips or what have you. Um, so yeah, as well as overnight trips with other residents. We did get another question in, and this question is, how often do you eat in the dining room or in your own home? And I would like to say as a caveat, maybe under normal circumstances where it's different right now with COVID, but maybe John and Katie, you can start off with how often did you dine in or dine out before COVID?
Oh,
Well, we always eat lunch in our apartment. Okay, so it would be just dinner. And also there's a weekly menu, so you know exactly what's going to be served at dinner each night. The sort of the main dish, but then there are standard items which are always available. And then during the warm weather, they allow you to make a reservation and eat on the terrace at Knoll House, which is very, very pleasant, and that's a served meal. In the bistro, they bring the food to your table, but in the dining area, which is connected to the bistro, then a very nice served meal is provided for you with tablecloths and wine, and and good food.
I'd say,
So,
I'd say we eat in the apartment maybe half the time for dinner, and the other half we use the dining facilities. We either go to the bistro, which as Katie said is informal, and then the dining area, which is table service. And so I'd say about half the time. What do you think?
What, what the viewers may not know is that at Norwood, you are not forced into a dining plan. So I know many communities, you have to eat a certain value or a certain number of times or a certain frequency. But at Norwood, it's totally up to you. And the prices are very reasonable. Someone who's
Yes.
out at restaurants, I could not get a piece of salmon with two sides for $5.50. I could get on the lunch menu here. Now, Nancy, how about you? How often do you eat in the dining room versus eat in your apartment or go out to eat too? Because there are no prisoners here.
So I'm trying to recall back to pre-COVID times, but I would say I'm one of those somewhat odd people who actually like to cook. So I probably cook in my apartment more than half the time for dinner. Um, and I tend to eat breakfast and lunch there. But I also have been known to take something I cooked out to the patio and eat it there. So that I can take advantage of eating with others. Um, and there is also the opportunity to eat with others in their apartments.
right.
I won't tell you where I live, but my nearest neighbor is an excellent cook.
And there was another question. Somebody wanted to know if you would go to the dining room, are you going to be seated with others or would you dine alone? And that's really up to you. So, unlike maybe assisted living or skilled nursing where people are kind of placed with other people to eat, at Norwood, it's up to you. You may want to dine alone or you may want to make plans to eat with somebody else. Or somebody else may call you up and invite you. So that is, it's the restaurant type experience where you're not going to be sat with other people unless it was at your request. So somebody else said, this is from Mary, tell me more about the opera opportunities, both for attending as well as learning and analysis, perhaps connected with a performance, as Katie alluded to. So maybe we can start with Katie or John, and then Nancy, if you have something to add.
Wait, I missed a question.
Want to know a little bit more about the opportunities regarding opera. So attending operas, as well as learning about maybe a post-opera analysis, maybe that's connected to a performance. So talk about the opera experiences available through Nollywood.
Well, the word any opera when we first came. I mean, there just weren't any performances to go to. But I did see some streaming opera. And usually before they do that, they send out the plot of the opera. For example, what was it just the other? Oh, it was Otello, Verdi. Okay, so they sent a plot, 3 or 4 pages typed that you could read, and then go down and hear the opera. But there wasn't any analysis after that. That would be for you and your friends who enjoy opera to talk about it yourselves, about the performance.
The,
So that was about a week ago.
at the opera, yeah, Lynn would give like a little bit of commentary before the opera, not a scholarly commentary, but a little bit of an introduction, and then she would stream the opera or the performance, and it was really nice. But in terms of going out to an opera,
Haven't done
we
that yet.
haven't done that, and of course with COVID, there's no opera to go to anyway.
Right.
But so it's
Right.
nice actually that we have a person who brings the opera to us through the streaming mechanism.
And I know before COVID, there were trips and such to the opera, and I'm sure they will come back eventually.
Yeah.
Right.
But do you have any insight on opera, Nancy?
Well, yes, before COVID, there were trips to the opera. They were, I would say, not regular. I have friends who subscribe to the opera here. And so Norwood doesn't go to all of them, but there are people who do. In terms of streaming, that is something that has happened monthly for as long as I've been here. And residents have a say in what opera is shown. And as Katie said, there isn't a formal discussion about it, but there's a lot of discussion that happens in the room and in the dining room after the opera is shown.
So now a question came up from Kate saying that group dining at a large table at breakfast or lunch could be a good way for a new person to connect. And that type of thing did happen before COVID. I don't know if it will ever happen again. I think, life patterns may change post-COVID, whether it'll be permanent or temporary remains to be seen. But that has happened here in the past. But also there's a welcoming committee at Knollwood, and maybe Nancy can speak to that.
Yes, there is a welcoming committee, and it does just that. It welcomes people. It provides them with some material about Norwood, and it also provides them with a person who is their kind of mentor or sponsor or whatever you want to call it, to kind of help them get oriented. Recently, we have been having, well, not very recently, but pre-COVID, we were having parties to welcome new residents. It's worth mentioning that Nollywood is kind of middle-sized, not too big, so it doesn't take too long, and maybe Katie and John can speak to this, for people to get to know other people here, and for old residents to get to know new residents.
Well, I think when we came, we were invited to several dinners. I think Margie was the first one,
Right.
and then Emily. That was in her apartment, and then Emily and we with Emily we went downstairs to the dining room.
It's Ellie.
Oh, excuse me, Ellie. Her name is the same as another friend. So I guess we went to 3 or 4 dinners where people invited us, and there were 4 to 6 people at each dinner. So you met a new group of people each time. So by the time you were done, you probably met 15 or 16 people, and so that was a good way to get off to a good start.
But also John met people at his at the swimming pool who were participating in the gait and balance classes, and so that's one way you meet people, certainly. I'm a retired librarian, so I've met people down in the library, a lot of people. And by the way, you should come and see the library here. It's just so, God, the collection is wonderful. It's very broad. unexpectedly for me, because I thought small library, you won't find that much, but it's great. It's really good.
I think
Uh,
maybe it's worth mentioning that there are two professional staff people here whose almost full-time job is to arrange activities, fitness activities or cultural activities. So there's always something going on, and the more activities you participate in, the more people you meet. So that really facilitates uh, developing friendships.
So we learned that Katie was a librarian and John a journalist before moving to Knollwood. Um, and do either of you work now?
Well, I do a little freelancing still. I just can't quite, as I say, get my foot out of the workspace, but so I continue with that a little bit. But I'm also involved here at Norwood. Um, Nancy is a very good recruiter as president of the association, and she drafted me onto the association board. So that's been a lot of fun actually to get involved. So that's my occupation right now.
And you're about to have another occupation, I think?
Well, yes, Nancy mentioned the External Affairs Committee. So who gets involved in issues which involve the facility and so forth. And I was drafted into being the local representative to our advisory neighborhood commission, which advises the city council on affairs, matters of interest in various neighborhoods. So I'm about to start that career in January after I'm elected, after a tough election of running unopposed. So I didn't have to buy any yard signs or anything like that. Anyway, I don't know where you'd put a yard sign up in an apartment building anyway.
Out on Oregon Avenue.
right.
Right? And then as far as paid work, so the journalism is still a paid position. Katie, do you have any paid positions anymore?
No, I'm not working formally anyway. I expect that I'll start working in the library, but I haven't done that yet. We're still, well, after a year, we're still trying to get our apartment organized.
But you are
Uh,
working on
oh,
the
well.
white elephant.
And yes, I am. Sally and I are going to be doing the white elephant sale, and so and that's really going to take a lot of our time, I think.
Now, Nancy, you are about to venture back into the workforce too, aren't you?
Well, in a way, I haven't actually left. I officially retired from full-time. I retired from full-time work in 2013, but I haven't really stopped. So I continue to work a little bit outside of Norwood. Um, my job was in medical school faculty, and my area of interest is medical computing. So I mostly these days I teach in that area.
Very good. Um, for all three of you to answer this, maybe what do you like most about Nollywood? And maybe we'll start with Nancy. She's on screen now.
The people, for sure. And I think it might be worth going back to that very early question about military, because there are a number of people here who were in the military or had some association with it. And that was something I had wondered about before I came, because I have passing acquaintance with the military. My father was in World War II and was in the Naval Reserves, and my husband, before I met him, was an enlisted person. So I kind of knew something about the military, and I wondered if not being very familiar with it would be a disadvantage. And the answer was no. The answer is that by and large, people with a military background are used to moving quite a bit, and they're pretty interesting people. And they're just like any other people, except that we have birthday celebrations for all the armed forces.
And one thing worth noting if we're talking about military is we were to have another guest on the program today, a gentleman who had an unexpected glitch, so he couldn't attend. And that gentleman is a resident who is former military. So the original intent was not to have nobody military on our program, but you're going to meet him at an upcoming session. So he's vowed to come back as his schedule permits, which should be pretty soon. Just didn't work for today. So John and Katie, what do you like most about Nollywood?
Well, again, I agree with Nancy. I love the people here. They're really wonderful. Very interesting people, very well educated, well traveled, well spoken. They have interesting experiences around the world, which they are happy to talk about. And there's a group of ladies that down in the Anderson Salon who meet sometimes. Well, we just run into each other afternoons waiting for the mail to come in, and we just sit around and talk. And that's really been fun. It's another way to meet people, but also just an interesting group. And I enjoy that very much. Just very casual, but fun. So in fact, I even found someone from Connecticut who knows a cousin of mine who lives in Connecticut. I mean, who would have guessed?
That's pretty cool.
So,
Yeah, well, I agree with Katie and Nancy. It really is the people here, and there's no monoculture related to the military. Everybody is very, as Katie said, has a lot of different experiences, and I think everybody enriches everybody else's lives by sharing those experiences. So it's really been a great, I should say, well, friendly and social place.
yeah. In fact, we had more social life here than we had living 47 years in our house. That's really been fun.
Somebody said it's like going on a cruise, but the boat doesn't go anywhere.
You're docked.
You're docked.
Docked here in DC. Yeah, the Port of Washington.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Now, Nancy hasn't shared this, but she mentioned her husband in the past, but she currently has a roommate, and I did invite him to come on. But why don't you tell us about your roommate, Nancy?
So my roommate is a dog. His name is Charlie, or Charles Barkley, if you want to be precise.
Oh,
That's okay.
And he's about 25 pounds and 9 years old, so he fits in. He meets the age restrictions. But it's lots of fun to have a dog here. We meet a lot of people going for walks, so we meet people both from Norwood and people in the neighborhood, and of course we meet a lot of dogs. He's also very popular with the residents of Norwood, many of whom have had dogs in the past but don't currently, and so at the moment he's out walking with one of his best friends, Dan, one of my neighbors.
That's really nice. Yeah. And you head out to Rock Creek Park once in a while too, don't you, with Charlie?
We do.
It's very convenient. For those of you who haven't been to Knollwood before, it's a side street that divides Knollwood from Rock Creek Park. So it's really wonderful escape place to be.
Yes, walking in the park is wonderful. And I should mention that in the 70s, I lived about 2 miles away from here and didn't really know that Knollwood existed, and didn't come to the park much. But living right across the street from it, it's really easy to just walk across the street, and there are many paths and interesting things to do. And Charlie and I are collecting collecting bridges, because there are lots and lots of bridges in the park. So we try and find new ones when we go.
Now I'm going to ask a question that's from me. What I'm curious to know is, I'll start with John and Katie. Why did you pick Nollywood over other options?
Well, we looked at other places, some of them physically, some of them just by brochures and mail. And we were very, we looked at one place very intensively, and it was very nice. What we liked again about Norwood, however, was the friendliness and the atmosphere here of being a very welcoming welcoming group. This is not to say that the other facilities weren't really nice, because they were, but we just had a better um, kind of a subjective, intangible feeling that Knollwood was the place for us. So, as I said, you think you should do your homework, do all the financial stuff, take your time. As Nancy said, it is a big decision, but I can't say enough about visiting places physically. It really will give you a good sense of how you're going to spend the rest of your life. And we just, when we walked in the door here, we just got a great feeling. That's not very scientific, but that's how it was.
These places all have a culture of their own, and so that's why you need to go and see them and perhaps meet people, because you get a sense of the culture of the place or of the community. And we just immediately sensed that here when we came here, right from the start. So that's had a lot to do with why we decided to come here.
And for the people who are watching today, even though COVID is going on, if somebody is so inclined, we're able to give you a tour of Norwood. We do have restrictions because of COVID, and we may not show you everything in one, visit, because we want to somewhat limit your time here with us at any given time. But we do have extra precautions that we take when people are visiting, starting from meeting you at the front door before you even enter, and then the whole time that you're here. So we are able to do that. We also do Zoom visits as well. But I know that yesterday when we were doing a little bit about practice testing our technology with John and Katie and Nancy, Nancy actually made an offer that, may I share that?
Sure.
Yeah, so yesterday, or maybe Nancy, you should just share what you offered yesterday.
Well, I was remembering when I got interviewed before I adopted Charlie, the dog, and it was by FaceTime, walk around my apartment with conversation, and I would certainly be happy to do that with anybody who would like to visit.
Mm-hmm. So,
And we could do Zoom as well. I know about Zoom now too.
yeah.
But what I was thinking of was that it is, I think it's good to meet people who are here at Knollwood. For some people, it's also important to see, people really living here. So that was why I offered to walk people around my apartment if they like.
Mhm. And we do have, so we're going to come back to that same question for you, Nancy, in a minute, but someone did ask, Mary asked a couple questions, or actually a question and a comment. Her question was wondering, is it safe to walk alone, and are there walking groups? And I'm thinking you might be thinking of walking alone, like in the neighborhood here. We're in a very, very, very safe and upscale neighborhood in DC. It's also very quiet. Um, so I think it's a very safe neighborhood. You don't hear of things happening here. It's a very quiet neighborhood. You may want to be a little cautious at night in the dark if you're not outside tripping or anything like that. And in Rock Creek Park, there are both paved walkways and dirt. So you may want to, just watch your footing. But safety, I think it's very safe here. And are there walking groups? I don't know that there are any walking groups. I know there are people that walk, but are there any walking groups here?
Well, there are informal groups at the moment, but there have been more formal ones. So one of the things that happens here is that if somebody has an idea, they say so. And often the response is, well, why don't you start it? And so, for example, at the moment, we're trying to start a French conversational group. And there have been walking groups in the past that started that way. Um, Somehow they tend to run in the spring and the fall and less in the winter and the summer.
Also, there is a community garden here, and it's lovely to walk up there. It's very wooded. You might encounter a deer or
Ah,
or rabbits. So that there's that wildlife to see. I have felt very secure and safe for the whole time that I've been here. And John and I have done walking all our all our lives. And we can walk in the neighborhood. We feel safe doing that, and also walking in Rock Creek Park. We feel very safe.
well, you've also moved from just a few blocks away, right?
Right,
yes,
right.
yes.
So we know the
We
neighborhood.
know the
Yes,
neighborhood, yeah, and
yes.
we walked in the neighborhood for 40 years, so
Yeah.
that's
More
a,
than-
that's an endorsement.
Yeah, you know it well.
Yeah.
We did have a comment also from Mary, who made her first visit here last month, because I remember Mary. And she noted that as a prospective resident, she agrees with your feeling, probably at what you were mentioning, John, about Norwood. Mary said it seems to feel more home-like rather than institutional, and she was glad to hear her own feelings reflected in your comments, John.
Well, good.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
When Mary comes back, we'll have to introduce all
great.
of you to Mary.
Certainly,
Sure.
sure.
Yeah.
So now let's ask Nancy, why did she pick Knollwood over other options? Because certainly you've had plenty to choose from.
Yes, we did, and there were a lot of factors involved. My approach to deciding things tends to list all of the criteria and then take all of the options and uh, visit them and answer, find out where they stand on the various criteria. And it might be worth mentioning that when I made my list of criteria, I checked them out with my children. My daughter tends to make decision matrices with 60 or so criteria. And so she was disappointed that I only had about 10. But the ones that I particularly remember included, of course, the people, as we've said, but other features were the other levels of care. We were very interested in not only independent living, but in assisted living and in the healthcare options, and found those much to our liking. And I think another factor that turned out to be important was size. So Knollwood is not big, it's not terribly small. To me, it's just the right size, but that's a personal choice. But I think it's an important criteria. I know that we visited some places that were very large and felt, well, institutional is a good word for it. So Knollwood seemed a more comfortable size.
And you mentioned children involved. So you kind of involved your children as you were searching, and I've known others who've done that. John and Katie, how about you? Were your children, did you involve them at any point in your decision making?
Well, we certainly had our younger son and his wife come over to visit, and they really were very favorably impressed. And then our older son's a foreign service officer, so he, when he was here over the holidays, he too checked it out very carefully, and he's always been interested in military history, so he just absolutely loved the library. He just sat down with a history of naval battles in the Pacific, and he was in heaven. We had to drag him away. So, but he thought it was just a wonderful choice for us, and they were very happy for us that we got out of our house and made this choice. And it is a big decision, it really is, but we've never regretted it.
And how did all of you actually learn about Nolawood? So Katie and John, I mean, you lived in the neighborhood, but how did you learn about Norwood?
Say that we had reserved at another
Yeah,
place
right.
because we didn't know about
Right.
it.
Well, yes, we actually, speaking of Rock Creek Park was my jogging route when I was jogging, and I would finish at Knollwood, which at that time was called Army Distaff Hall, and we knew about it, and we actually had a relative who was here for rehab, so we had set foot in the place. But it was only after we were looking at other facilities and looking at the full dimension of continuing care that we discovered that Norwood had. So I got on the internet and I was looking and Norwood popped up, and as a result of that, we made an inquiry here, and we found out that the eligibility requirements had been expanded greatly, and that we would be welcome here. So we put that in on our shopping list and compared it to the other place that we had looked at, and you all know what we feel about Norwood. So that's how we came to know about it. It was right in it's kind of a gem right in our backyard, which we didn't discover until a little bit late in the game, but we discovered it.
And what about for you, Nancy?
Well, I agree with that phrase, a gem right in our backyard that we discovered late. As I say, we lived here in the 70s, but didn't know about Norwood. But when we decided to look for a life plan community, we did a pretty thorough search, and but at that point, Norwood was restricted to relatives of military officers, so we didn't learn about it until we were talking this over with a elder care attorney who said, well, of course you've looked at Knollwood. And we said, where's that? But I think they're doing a better job of marketing now.
Thank you. And we did get another question, and I think this one is probably for me, but it's from Francis, and Francis wants to know if Norwood is expanding. Norwood had, I think, kind of looked a little bit into that idea about a year or so ago. There are no plans right now to expand, and certainly, gosh, we've got to, I think, as a world, get over COVID. We don't have a lot of land here either, though. So right now, there are no expansion plans. Would they ever come to be in the future? Maybe. But we're kind of landlocked, too. So we've got 16 acres here and Rock Creek Park out front and houses all around. So I think Noah would probably pretty much stay this way for a while. So I think that may be all of our questions. I think we may have had them all answered for all of our viewers. So if anybody else has a question, if you want to key it in really fast. What I do like to say, though, is if you ever wanted to watch this again, we do record these webinars. We have done eight or nine previous to this one, and they are recorded and sit on our website, which is nollywoodcommunity.org. And we've also had other interviews with residents on our webinar page. So if you just look on the events menu, and then you'll come to our webinar page, you'll actually see other interviews with other residents too. So that might be kind of nice, as well as educational topics about Norwood, such as just some very basics about Norwood, more insight into the financial components of Norwood. You could watch a webinar to learn about the difference between assisted living and skilled nursing. You could watch another one to learn about the difference between independent living and assisted living, current real estate market, which is great. And we got one more question. It's, what is the status of the East 6 bus? John or Nancy?
That's John.
That's John. All right, John.
The status of the E6 bus is that we have petitioned Metro to maintain the bus service. Our group here responded in force, and we have support from our local ANC, of which I will soon be a part, to make sure that is held up. We have strong support from our city council member here. We have designate, we have strong support from an at-large city council member. So we have strong support from the mayor. So we are hoping that all of these forces will be brought to bear, and that the E6 bus will continue. We're pretty hopeful. This battle has been waged in the past, I understand, and each time the neighborhood has been victorious. So we're just going to keep our heads up and hope it works out. We think it will.
And for people who may be viewing but don't know, the E6 bus stops right at the front door of Norwood. So it's a pretty great way to get around for what, $1? Something like
Yeah,
that.
$1.50. Yep. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Wait, is there another question? No, I think that was it. The E6 bus. Maybe not. Oh, okay. So we do have Francis asking, which area neighborhood council are you a member of, John?
ANC 3G02.
3T02?
3G. ANC 34G02. Yes.
Okay.
I have the Alaska territory. I have a fairly small neighborhood in terms of people, but a very large territory because it includes the park.
Oh, yes. Saw the squirrels and the deer.
Yeah, right.
Well, thank you, everybody. We are having our next webinar, I believe, is November 17th.
Okay.
And for many of you viewing, you'll probably also get a very fun invitation in the mail, possibly even this week. That is curbside dessert pickup. So make sure you check your inbox as well as your mailbox from the post office. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Okay.